Hello, I'm not manly enough to make this video yet. Hello, DerpsAndChortles. I, much like you, am currently wondering how in the world this beard makes me any manlier. And it just fell off. I'm not gonna put it back on. I'm not. What does a cowboy, a historian, a deputy sheriff, a naturalist, a champion boxer, an author, a hunter, an explorer, a police commissioner, an assistant secretary of the Navy, a governor of New York, and a war hero all have in common? They are all Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was born October 27th, 1858 in New York City. As a child, he was extremely weak. He had asthma. In fact, the doctors didn't think he would live past 10. How did he deal with that? He exercised his problems away. He climbed mountains, he ran, he swam, he took up boxing. At age 21, he took a hunting trip in the woods. More specifically, it was a 2-week trip in sub-zero temperatures. Most of us on one of those kinds of trips would be a curled-up, shivering, sobbing ball of pathetic loserdom. Theodore Roosevelt, on the other extremely terrifying and manly hand, wrote later in his diary that, quote, "I have never passed a more pleasanter 2 weeks." Pleasanter. Naturally, when a man this awesome comes around, he's bound to make people jealous. The local in the town near a place where Teddy was hunting bears hired a killer named Paddock to either scare Roosevelt out of town or shoot him. Word of Paddock's intentions traveled very quickly to many ears, including those of rockin' awesome Roosevelt himself. Did Roosevelt run away? Not quite. He actually went to the place where Paddock was staying, knocked on the door, then said to Paddock, "I understand you've threatened to kill me. I have come over to see when you want to begin the killing." Yes, Roosevelt was a very intense man who accomplished many awesome feats. Oh, and he did all of this with terrible eyesight. And that terrible eyesight led to him getting glasses, which consequently led to him getting teased. Once he was in a bar and there was a very large, very terrifying, very drunk man stumbling around the room. He finally got to Roosevelt and called the man Four Eyes. Teddy then responded, "If I have to, I have to." Then he punched the man multiple times and smashed his face against the corner of the bar. All of that happened before he became President of the United States. He did a few quirky things in office. When he walked around the White House, he would have a gun on his belt. He didn't really need it, seeing as he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a boxing champion. Presidents have had their pets. George Bush had that cute little black dog. Theodore Roosevelt had a little different kind of pet. He actually kept a lion and a bear at the White House as pets. The man was a Republican, and if you haven't noticed from history, Republicans really don't care whose toes they step on. For instance, he received lots of letters from Army cavalrymen because he was making them ride 25 miles a day for training, which is totally understandable. 25 miles is a very long distance to ride on horseback. In response to those letters, he got on a horse and rode 100 miles from sunrise to sunset at the age of 51. Probably one of the manliest ways I can think of telling someone to stop whining. Since this was before they enforced the 2-term policy, he ran for a 3rd term. While he was campaigning, he was giving a speech to a crowd, and a man in the crowd shot him in the chest with a gun. Now, your average human being, upon getting shot in the chest by a gun, would probably fall over, scream, seek medical attention, or die. Theodore Roosevelt did none of these things. With his unattended gunshot wound bleeding down his chest, he continued to give the rest of his speech. Here's a visual example of just how Theodore Roosevelt compared to other presidents. Other presidents. Theodore Roosevelt. To close this video, here's a quote from a fellow politician at the time of Roosevelt's death. "Death had to take him sleeping, for if Roosevelt had been awake, there would have been a fight. You didn't mess with Theodore Roosevelt." Manly, 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 manly. I get to clean this up.